everyone. My name is David McLeod, and I am your life mastery coach and author of the fabulous little book, A Life to Die For. I'm also one of the co-authors in the best-selling series, The Wellness Universe Guide to Complete Self-Care. Welcome to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, and fulfillment. This is episode 226. The title today is The Buzz About Energy. This is going to be fun. Now, energy is the fundamental and primal life force that permeates and infuses the universe. It is the foundation out of which all consciousness and awareness arises. It is an invisible, subtle vitality that underlies all physical and metaphysical phenomena. It connects all beings across the cosmos, fostering a spiritual sense of unity, compassion, and I hope, boundless love. Furthermore, because of its relationship to consciousness, it plays a role in manifestation and intention, where thoughts, emotions, everything like that, and all your intentions emit vibrational frequencies that can attract corresponding experiences into our lives. Now, this all seems intuitive and pretty straightforward, right? So why is energy so mysterious and fascinating? Well, in many ways, it's like navigating through a hidden labyrinth filled with secret passageways and unexpected twists. And just when you think you have it mostly figured out, energy whispers, "Hold on tight, my friend. There's lots more here to discover." It's a captivating dance between intentions and cosmic forces, where each step unravels deeper layers of self-awareness. And as we're going to learn in this episode of Life Mastery TV, energy is your invisible companion, guiding you through the dark corners of your psyche and illuminating the amazing hidden gems within you. Now, to help me with the intricacies of this really deep and expansive topic, I've invited back my friend and my colleague, Kristi Borst, to join us. Now, Kristi is going to bring her wisdom as an integrative quantum healer and spiritual guide to help us navigate these perplexing waters. So please welcome Kristi Borst back to the program today.
Hi, David.
And there she is. All right. Welcome, Kristi. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to all of you who are here on the live chat, please feel free to put your comments or your questions or anything that you feel in the moment about what we're saying, and we will do our best to accommodate you and respond to you as we go. But first, I want to talk to you, Kristi. You and I have done a lot of things together, and it's been a while since I've seen you. So first of all, I want to say it's great to see you again, and I'm so glad you were able to join me today.
Well, I always love our conversations, and I thank you for asking me to come back on Life Mastery TV, because I love what you're doing and how you're doing it, and to help others just find that better place to live.
Right. Now you describe yourself as a quantum energy healer. So tell us a little bit about what that means and why this whole subject of energy is so important to you.
I think the reason I use the word quantum and not just like spiritual energy healer or energy healer is that I am able to go beyond this space and time, even beyond this lifetime, to affect healing in the mind, body, spirit, emotions, cellular memories. So it's at such a small level that we can affect huge changes.
Right. Okay, so you mentioned one word that really triggered a thought for me, and that's the whole concept of cellular memory. Now, I've heard people talk about this before, and I have a little bit of an understanding of it. But for the purpose of making sure that our audience understands it, can you please just tell us a little bit more what you mean about cellular memory? How is it possible for our cells to have memories?
Okay, so I think, I'm not a quantum physicist and I'm not a science, but this is my interpretation or my assessment. Based on my experience as a healer and working with other people. So I'll give you an example. I think this is the easiest way to answer that question. I have a friend who has had chronic lung problems, chronic breathing problems. And we were together one time and she was complaining she couldn't breathe. And so I asked her if she would let me work on her. And I went around the back of her, and, sometimes I just have these knowings, or, I feel it's divine guidance, it's higher guidance from, my higher self, God source. I don't really label it. It's from light and love. And so I had this image of a dagger in her back. And I just, I told her what I saw and I said, may I release it? And I pulled it out and she felt a release with that. And she was never stabbed in the back with a dagger in this lifetime, but we both believe that happened in another lifetime. And she died of that wound, so she didn't have time to process that in human form. So she brought that, what I'm calling a cellular memory. You could call it an unconscious memory or a multidimensional memory, with her into this physical form. And that memory, if you will, affected her human body so that her spirit or her life force essence wasn't fully flowing in that area of her body.
Yeah, very, very, very interesting for sure. Well, I got a couple of ideas here that I'd like to share. First, I have this notion that memory isn't what we think it is anyway. I know that science has tried to convince us that all of our memories are stored within the tissues and the synapses of our brains, but then they tell us that everything that we have ever experienced in our lives has somehow we remember it all. And I think, there's just not enough synapses in the brain to capture all of those memories. And I have read books and I've learned things, and I actually believe that memory is not stored anywhere in the body. I believe that our body is kind of like an antenna, if you like, that has a way of connecting in to the 0 point energy field. And here we are back at energy again. And that big, massive ocean of consciousness where all memories reside. And so for me, I can get access to my memories just by making sure I'm tuned into the right frequency for myself. But then we have people who claim to be able to read people's minds. And I think part of that has to do with they have the ability to tune themselves to different frequencies, and they maybe don't even realize they do this. Mm-hmm. And the same thing, I think that this notion of reincarnation could be associated with that idea as well. Because if the memory is strong enough out there, we may associate it with another time period or another location in space. And I think it's all fascinating, and I'm not trying to debunk reincarnation or any of that stuff. I'm just simply saying that it is a possibility for a way of explaining it. The other thing I wanted to say is I have done a lot of shadow work with people. And in some of the processes that I've done with them, we have come to very, very similar situations that you described, where I'll have someone who's saying, I've got this energy that's stuck in my body somewhere. And I say, well, can you describe it? Does it have a color? Does it have a shape? Does it have I ask for descriptors. So we give it some kind of an essence. And I say, well, and what do you want to have happen with that thing in your body? Well, I want it out. Great. So how do we get it out? And now I let them figure out how to remove it. And I've had people tell me they've had like a big giant rock stuck in their chest, or a pain that's so sharp they feel like a lance went through their back or something like that. And so we go through some processes to help them remove that. And as you say, when that energetic movement takes place, there is a huge release. And some people may believe that it happened in a previous lifetime. Some people may just think that this is the way I'm describing this pain in my body right now, and I'm just trying to release it. It really doesn't matter what the belief is. And I know you know this yourself because you don't even spell the word belief the way most people do. But anyway, it's a fascinating topic for sure. And this notion of energy is, I mean, it underpins everything that we're talking about here.
Right. And I think, to speak on reincarnation just a bit, in everything that I talk about, really, I'm speaking from my own experience and my own experiencing of energy and energy work. So
Right.
for me, I have actually seen myself in waking time in another lifetime. So for me, there is no doubt that
Right.
I have lived multiple times. Now, other people, may not feel that, they may not resonate with that. That's okay. We are not here to change your beliefs or to force you to believe anything.
Right.
But I think I would invite you to open your awareness to a sensing beyond this time and place. And if you have gone to places on this earth and you have either felt like you've been there before, but you haven't in this lifetime, or conversely, you have a strong negative reaction to that place, I would suggest it's possible you were there in another time and space reality.
Sure. Yep. No, I absolutely agree with what you're saying. And I also think that life doesn't only exist on Earth. There are plenty of other realms that we could easily have found ourselves in, and maybe not even in a human form, not even in a physical body form. Some other energetic structure that, but it was conscious enough to be able to have some kind of an experience of being, shall we say. And yeah, I totally agree with that. Even though I personally have not had any really strong memory experiences of reincarnation, I haven't dismissed it. I just know that I've got an alternate way of understanding it. And given that I haven't had the actual experience, that temporary explanation works for me, right? So now, on the other hand, I have done quantum healing hypnotherapy with one practitioner, and she tried to take me back to a past life, and I couldn't really connect to anything except what I described a moment ago, a sense of being a non-form, a pure energy form, whose purpose, I don't know that it was a purpose so much as my job. My job was creating tunnels and bridges to connect different energies around the universe. That's what I saw in that experience. Now, is it real? I don't know. Who knows? I mean, the brain can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined anyway. So who knows whether it's real or not?
I do want to go back to the whole, I don't know if I want to say the topic of cellular memory, but the topic of energy in our bodies.
Sure.
And I want you to think about the body kind of separate from who you are. So right. The body is, for me, I say it's our spaceship here on Earth. Right. And we come in, as a soul, and we're in this spaceship. And it helps us to have our life here on Earth. But we're not the body. We're so much more than the body.
Absolutely.
But this body is incredible. It wants to be whole. It wants to bring us health. It wants to repair itself. But when we have a trauma, either from this life or a past life, that we haven't been able to process, and we just kind of, let's stuff this in the right ankle for now,
Right.
unconsciously, especially, as children, it can affect the body's ability to repair itself. So this is kind of the magic, right, of energy work, that it can affect such a big physical change, because the body's there like, I want to fix, I want to fix, I want to fix. But it can't, because it's blocked. So when the block is removed, then the body does its thing, right? So that is, I think, a huge component of energy healing, is that the healing is in the flow, or restores the flow, so that this incredible body that we live in can do its thing.
Right. Absolutely. And it is an amazing vehicle for sure. And I do agree with you that it can heal from some of the most horrendous pain and suffering and trauma and all the rest of it. I mean, how many times have you heard stories of people who have had some kind of an accident or something that left them paralyzed, and they were told they were never going to walk again? And they say, no, I disagree with your assessment, and this body is going to walk again. Now, it may not walk as perfectly as it did before the accident, but many times we've seen people overcome those negative diagnoses. And it happens all the time. Oh, you've got terminal cancer. You're going to be dead in four weeks and live out the rest of your life. I mean, when the intention is right, and when people, as you say, remove those blocks, magic happens. And I think magic is probably the best word for it, because often science simply cannot explain it.
I do say to people, there's a huge difference between someone else's diagnosis and your prognosis. So,
Exactly.
we can claim our power to take our body wherever we want to take it.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and the other thing I think that's important is, even though our body seems to have boundaries associated with it, it's well known that there are, ethereal bodies that expand out beyond the physical body. And, they have all kinds of different names for them. And I know that they're associated with different energy chakras and all that kind of other stuff. It's fascinating, fascinating stuff that most of mainstream science will completely ignore and call it whatever, pseudoscience or quackery or some other unpleasant name.
Well, that is true. And I think a huge turning point really has been the emergence of quantum physics.
Right.
And it's at that minute level that, they even call it the God particle, right? That science is starting to recognize that there's more than just, I don't know, what I'm hearing is there's more than just bean counting going on, right? There's more than just like the physical bits and pieces. And I think one of the things that really was a turning point for me, because I was raised like everybody else to believe that the mind is the master, and science knows everything, and I had to almost deprogram myself, or expand, I guess, my way of looking things, so that I could get to this point I'm at, where I can do this energy work. But it was to think of, that model that we saw as children of the atom. And, there's the proton and the nucleus, and then there's the electrons, going around, and that the actual, physical parts of that atom take up, I think, 3% of that atom's space, and the rest of that 90, I think that's even wrong, it's less than 1%. The rest of that 99% of the space, or the the matter, or whatever you want to call that atom, is potential. It's energy. It's it's potential, really. That's the best way to say it.
Right.
Um,
Well, you mentioned about quantum physics, and I think one of the biggest discoveries in that whole realm of quantum physics is the notion of dark energy. And it's not called dark energy because it's bad or evil or anything like that. It's called dark because they just don't know very much about it. And the fact of the matter is, according to most scientists who do this kind of work, dark energy makes up about 97% of the entire energy of the universe. That is to say, what we experience on a day-to-day basis fits into the 3% that isn't dark energy, or that is not classified as dark energy. And that whole thing just boggles my mind. Science now has shown that if you take a cubic centimeter of so-called empty space, it has enough energy to power the entire Earth for thousands of years. Now, how is that possible? Our brains aren't designed to cogitate that, to make sense of that. And so we dismiss it, right? We dismiss it. And so this is where the idea of free energy comes from. There's so much energy around us and so much available. Why are we wasting our time on, digging for oil or stuff like that? Why aren't we spending more time finding out how to tap into that energy and make the best use of it in our world? That's what's really fascinating to me.
I don't want to go to that conversation.
Why is that?
Well, because I think the reason we don't go there is because there's money in big places controlling.
Oh, of course.
Where we are. So
that's right. And what is money but another form of energy?
Right.
And
we look at everything on Earth is really energy. And we're starting to harness that energy in terms of, the wind is energy and the water is energy. So, and the sun is energy. So I think we are going there. There's, some hurdles that we have to cross to totally get to that point. But I feel the tide has turned, literally and figuratively on that. You mentioned kind of briefly chakras, and that was something I did want to talk about. And, there are, depending on who you talk to, there are, 7 chakras that you need to know. There are 12, there are 20. I mean, there's all kinds of numbers. I am a big fan of keeping things simple. So I prefer to just talk about 7. There's 7 major chakras along our spine. And since much of our bodily systems connect in through the spine, I think that's a great place to focus. But, I don't even know how many chakras we have. And I kind of see chakras in a simplified way as that connection point. I would even say I see it as a snap, like a clothing snap, where the soul or spirit emotions, the non-physical aspect of self, actually like snaps into the body. So I think it's important to have a basic understanding of those 7 chakras so that we understand the emotional aspect of that part of the body, so we can become more aware of unconscious thoughts that might be making us sick or preventing our body from healing, or also ways we can better empower ourselves to be aware of what our body is trying to tell us in terms of how we might be disempowered.
Yeah. The notion, well, I won't say the notion, the idea of chakras is fascinating to me. I know that there's a lot of research being done on them. And yeah, I've heard, well, the number 7 is the number that people assign to the physical, the chakras that are associated with the physical body. The other ones are all part of our, the auric body or the ethereal body or whatever. And who knows, there could be an infinite number of those. But I agree with you that it requires a little bit of understanding. And I know that we have the 7 chakras rising up from from the lowest up to the highest up here at the the crown chakra, and and each one has its own color associated with it, and they happen to be associated with the colors of the rainbow, which I find interesting. And of course, the heart chakra is green, which I find fascinating. I don't know why. Were those arbitrarily selected colors, or do they actually have some valid reason for choosing those colors?
I think I'm not an expert in the history of chakras. I'm kind of more I use them as I guess portals, I would say, when I'm working with other people. But I think the whole I guess system of chakras and that word come from India. So I'm not sure how the names were assigned or whatever, but I do know in doing energy work that many times those colors do show up in energy work. And people can even have an aversion to a specific color if that chakra is blocked. I'm just going to pop into the chat a blog that I wrote about the 7 major chakras, which will give you a very, kind of basic view and how it kind of relates to the body. And I think the other thing that I want to mention about the heart chakra is that some people do morph that green over to pink. So if you don't feel comfortable that your heart chakra is green, you can use pink. And pink quartz is a good example of a gemstone that people use to work with the heart chakra. So right. Really, we are the masters here. And if something doesn't resonate with you, you might know that for you it needs to be pink. So, please, I encourage people to use some of this stuff as starting points, but then really tap into your own knowing of what is going to work for you.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point, and I think a very important one, actually. We often are given information from other people, and we have to remember that those people are merely sharing their own experience. They're not sharing our experience. They're not telling us what we have gone through or anything like that. And how could they know except through this energetic exchange of information, right? But it's like one of my favorite writers, his name is David Hawkins. He's written many books on the subject of consciousness. And I find his material very, very fascinating, and I mostly resonate with it. But there are some things that he says that just make no sense to me. And I look at those things and I say, okay, why am I just resisting this because of ego, or is there something else going on? I think that all of us, every single one of us on this planet, is already deeply connected to love and ultimate truth. And so when we simply allow ourselves to release the physical ideas and the ego mind associated with it, and we connect in with our soul, as you have said before, when we allow ourselves to do that, then truth just reveals itself to us. It's like, this is self-evident, and I no longer have a need to tell you something that's important and have you understand it from my perspective that it's important. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because when I have that attachment, that's my ego mind overshadowing my spiritual essence. And I need to be aware of that, and I need to bring myself back to that so that I can say, wait a minute, That's just my ego mind trying to push an idea onto somebody else. Stop it. Invite the other person to check in for him or herself to find out what's true there.
I
That's
think,
what I
though,
think
for
we should.
some people, it can be almost like a bit of their training wheels. They're trying to not necessarily that they're an ego, but they haven't quite reached that point that they totally trust themselves. So they're trying to find alignment to help validate what they're
Right.
getting.
Right.
So, I guess they're, I would encourage you to maybe see it that way as well. But I do think, you mentioned earlier my spelling of beliefs, and I'm just going to kind of put that in the chat. We have to really kind of look at what our beliefs are, because many times there is a lie. And it's not, it's not a bad lie. It may be, sometimes our parents told us, this is the way life is, because they're trying to actually give us a leg up, right? Because they don't want us to have to make the same blunders they did. But sometimes we need to make those blunders for our path. So really, it's important that we look at our beliefs as once we're adults, to see what is actually keeping us more limited in our joy, in our wellness, in our experiencing of this world. And kind of looking at things from this quantum perspective of, in each moment, there is literally an infinite potential of possibilities for each of us. And it's almost like we're riding this wave of unlimited potential. But when a belief comes in and says, and I'm going to kind of use you, David, as an example. You mentioned in a couple of your shows that you had this dream of being, a rock star, right? But and you're feeling it, you're vibing to it, you got your band and everything. But then Dad says, "Oh, geez, David, you're never going to make it as a rock star. You really need to have a plan B, right?" All of a sudden, that wave just kind of smashed down, right? So we have to be aware of the things internally that cause us to implode our own wave of infinite potential.
Right. I agree with that. I've talked about beliefs a lot myself in my own teachings and my own presentations. I think every belief is a limiting belief just by its very nature, because the moment you believe X, you immediately set up a dynamic in your mind that says, well, anything that doesn't fit into that X has to be excluded, and I have to keep looking for evidence to support X. And that's part of the problem with beliefs. It's not so much, I agree that sometimes we believe things that aren't true, and therefore sometimes we're believing a lie. That's absolutely correct. I believe that's without a doubt. However, the secret, I think, isn't so much about dismissing all our beliefs, because some of them are very useful, right? Some of them are quite useful beliefs and worthwhile to hang on to. But I think it does make sense to make a practice of periodically reviewing beliefs. And I recommend people do this at least 3 or 4 times a year. And even more frequently if you feel inclined to do so. But at least 3 or 4 times a year, just go through your entire belief system and say, what do I believe about the world? Is that true or not? Is it supporting me or not? And deciding whether you want to keep that belief or modify it or throw it out in favor of something else. Those are the options that you have available when it comes to belief. Now, the other thing is, a belief, in my mind, is nothing more than a thought process that is kind of frozen in time. This is what gives it its hard shape that makes it hard for us to, deviate from that belief. If we can understand that belief is just a conglomerate of thoughts that came together into a form, and now we believe that whole system, whatever that is, then, and we recognize this, and we can shine a light on it and start to thaw that out and look at the individual pieces. Then we may come to understand how that belief came into existence in the first place. And it might have something to do with childhood, like you said, or it might have something to do with something that happened at work, or who knows, maybe you got stopped by a police officer for, he's charging you with speeding and you don't believe you were speeding. I mean, who knows what causes these thought patterns to come into existence, right? But once they're there, if you lock onto them and you freeze them in time, they become like hardcore beliefs for you. And so you have the option at any time to shine a light, bring a little heat to it, thaw it out, look at the pieces, and maybe let those pieces go. That's what you can do. And by the way, as far as the rock star thing is concerned, you're absolutely right about what happened there. And there are times when I have this nostalgic wish that I had gone forward with that and become a rock star. Sometimes I have that thought. But on the other hand, I also have the thought that had my father not said what he said, I would not have had the experiences that I had after making the choices that I made to get where I am today.
Absolutely.
And who knows, I might have had a drug overdose and died like Jimi Hendrix or, somebody like that. I'm not that I was into drugs, but, any of those things could have happened, right?
I think sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think the time to look at your beliefs is when you're in fear. So when you're fearful about something, that's when I think you need to look at what are the belief systems, or what is that belief that is grounding you in a space of fear. Because that's the opposite of being supported, guided, loved on your path, right? So you've got to see if there is a belief that you can become aware of, because once we become aware of a belief that's holding us back, then we can start to watch for it and reprogram it.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good point. I agree with you. Most of our beliefs actually do come about as a result of fear. We want to avoid things that we believe cause us pain, and so we look for ways to compensate or cope with those kinds of situations, and we construct these patterns to protect ourselves, and they become the armor that we use. And sometimes that armor comes with, ball and chain and axe and various other tools that we use to protect ourselves. But at the beginning, when we first started this, you were talking about how in your own life, sometimes you have an experience that goes beyond this physical realm, this 3D world that we live in. And I know that one of the things that you proposed we talk about was this idea of 5D. And I want to dive into that, because that is something that I think a lot of people don't understand. Well, what happened to 4D? Why are we skipping over 4D? So can you help us with that?
So again, I am not going to give you like a scientific explanation of any of this, because that's not really where I'm spending my time and energy to to be able to be an encyclopedia or a quoter. But my concept of 5D is that it's more about vibration than it is about I guess matter. So I feel like I spent a lot of my life in 3D, in the third dimension. of being aware of myself as this physical body, judging myself by what my body could do, believing that I needed to, work hard for my money, do XYZ to be a good person. And to me, living in a space of 5D is more about understanding my infinite connection to all of life, my innate connection to source, God, love, all that is, harnessing that connection, trusting it, surrendering to it, understanding the power of my 5D senses, which I would say are the non-physical senses. So my intention, my intuition, my inner guidance system, even you could say my faith. So some of the aspects of myself that I was told as a child were not real are what I see as 5D. Does that make sense? How I'm saying that?
No, it's a more expansive view of our true nature, I think, than just, well, I mean, I totally agree with you, and I've been teaching this for years anyway. But the idea that you mentioned this yourself, you are not your body, but you're also not your name. You're not the roles you play. You're not the thoughts you have. You're not the feelings that you have. You're not even the experiences that you have. Those are all just expressions, reflections of who and what you really are. And the what portion is what most of us fail to acknowledge. Well, what am I really? And it's when I do that deep dive and I look into the truth of who I really am and what I really am, then I begin to see that expansive nature. I begin to connect in with my oneness with all that is, my connection to God, spirit, source, all that is, as you said. And that has to do with, I think, awakening to the truth. Really understanding that everything in this physical world is so restricted and so limited, and yet I know at a deep, deep level that I am not limited, even though my body has some restrictions. That's the beauty of it to me. And so I've never thought of it in terms of 3D or 5D, but now that you've explained that, that makes sense to me.
Another way to look at it is to think of a cube, and we give it the value of length times width times depth.
Right.
But what about its journey through the universe? What about its position in time space? What about whatever energy it has that expands beyond that measurement of length and width and depth?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Or even the way it expands within itself to the universe.
Yeah.
I mean, if you try to think about some of this with your mind, you'd just be like off in the corner going like this. But I mean, right. It's really like expanding your perception of yourself and the world, expanding to consider the infinite potential in each moment for yourself and for everything. And as we change one aspect, we can change every aspect.
Right. It's beautiful. It really is. It's fascinating. It's beautiful. And I like how you say it. When you just use your mind to try and comprehend it, you get all wrapped up in knots and stuff. But that's the same thing as this whole notion of meditation. And just allowing, okay, what happens when I just try and quiet things down and I observe my thoughts? What happens when I look at just an individual thought and trying to figure out where's that coming from? By the way, who is the one doing the observing? That's the other question. And so I now look at this and I say, oh, can I see the observer? Can I expand my awareness even more and to see who's observing me, observing the thought? And can I expand it further to see who's observing me, observing the thought? Do you see what I'm saying? It becomes like the nested dolls, the Russian nested dolls, except we're going outward rather than inward, right? Or,
Right.
I mean, maybe we are going inward, but it feels like I'm expanding, right? And that is just a fascinating journey. Begins to approach the idea of infinity. That is to say, I really have no limits. All the limits that I think I have, or that I believe I have, are they're just illusions.
And there's one thing that's coming to mind that I think I'd like to touch upon, and that is, I did mention briefly vibration, and there is a measurement of vibration of the earth called the Schumann resonance.
Right.
And
7.83 hertz.
it has been documented that it has been rising. And I believe that, the higher the frequency, the more, the more, how would I say this? Hold on a second. The higher the frequency, the less we are affected by the veil, if you will, or that feeling of separation from ourself as energy.
Right.
So we are in a time when the earth is raising its vibration, because I see the earth, kind of thanks to the work of a woman named Dr. Suzanne Lee. The earth is kind of a kindred of mine. I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, but she is a being having a planetary experience in a body that's a planet. So she is choosing to raise her frequency, which is helping everything else that's living on her to raise its frequency. So a lot of this, it's not just a coincidence that there's a lot more energy work now. And, we're talking about these kind of things because this is the shift that we are in, is
Right.
that, we went through the industrial age, and, it did a lot of physical damage to our planet, and some would argue to our psyches, but we're in this phase of trying to emerge to something more and better.
Right. And you know what the beauty of this is? It doesn't matter whether you are right or wrong. It doesn't matter whether I am right or wrong. What matters, I think, is that we're both tuned in to this rising energy. We are both experiencing that, and we're not the only ones. There are many people. I think everybody is starting to feel it now. And they may not fully understand what it is they're feeling because they haven't done the kind of work that you and I have done. But the fact is, you are right. I think the vibration of the universe is rising. And I think that and everything is rising at its own rate. We're not all rising at the same rate.
Right.
So some may appear to be accelerating more rapidly than others. And that's okay too. We're all going through our own experience as part of this process, because we made some kind of a spiritual contract years before we came into the physical being, and we decided we wanted to have a series of experiences. We wanted to do something in order to have one major life experience. We didn't necessarily write down all the details and say things like, well, I want to fail this test in the 5th grade, and then I want to have a car accident on this day. No, we didn't do that. We simply made some kind of an arrangement saying, I want to have the experience. I know this for me is true. I want to have the experience of understanding how important it is for me to know the truth of who I really am. That's the experience I came here to have. And let me tell you, it's been a hell of a ride. Okay? And it's been an amazing journey. And now I have no doubt about it anymore. But certainly for the first 40, 50 years of my life, I had lots of questions, lots of doubts, and I disowned myself in many ways. So I've now got to the point where I have no question about it. And so when I can tell other people the truth to them, they're saying, what the hell are you talking about? Because they haven't had the experience that I've had. This is why I'm looking to raise my consciousness to a high enough level where instead of talking to you, I can just simply go inside, grab this experience, kind of bundle it up into a little ball, and just hand it over to you and say, poof, there you go. That's my experience right there. And then you understand everything that I've ever said. Wouldn't that be awesome?
I don't know. I like to have conversations.
Well, I know. But I'm not saying that I would stop having conversations. I think it would just be fun to be able to exchange the full experience.
I think one thing that you said kind of brought me back to our conversation about multi-dimensions and multi-lifetimes. And for me, the lifetime that I have engaged with in my waking moments is one that was 180 degrees different than this one. I was a man. I came into a tribe and was embraced by the medicine woman and became medicine man at a young age. So having my abilities was honored and pushed to the forefront. And so then I come into this lifetime, I'm a girl and I try to do my healing and I'm told never do that again. So I think this is part of why it's important to understand that we have more than one life experience, because our soul, or our higher aspect, whatever you want to call it, wants to experience more. So I can understand everything I went through in this lifetime when I understand that I've had the opposite situation.
Nice.
So neither one's better, neither one's worse. I had pains in that lifetime because, I know things about myself then that that are not true now. So I don't want to, take a lot of time on this, but it's just amazing. We can say, why me? Why is this happening to me? Well, that may be because our perspective is only from this identity that we're wearing. And when we open ourselves to understand that the universe is seeking balance, and there may be balance in another situation or in another circumstance.
Yeah, beautiful. I saw that somebody raised a hand there briefly, and I was just going to say, if you have a comment or a question, please post it in the chat and we'll do our best to respond to you. I didn't see whose hand that was, so I can't address the person directly.
Yes,
all of this has to do with...
Question.
What's that?
We'd love to answer your question.
Right. I was just going to say that all of this, everything that we're talking about, the energy, the whole thing, really boils down to one common idea, and that is consciousness, awareness, raising our awareness, becoming more aware of what's going on in our lives, and understanding more deeply what we came here to do. So do you want to talk a little bit about awareness and how important that is?
So I think that awareness really starts with questioning yourself and what decisions are you making on autopilot that are working for you and which ones are not working for you. So when there's when there's a thought pattern perhaps, or a belief that you find that you're like, okay, I can see how, my mother believed that, and so maybe now I have taken that on to believe. Well, what if you're the one that came here to shut that thought down? So there's a lot of power in that place of the observer and that non-judgmental aspect of just monitoring yourself, because really each of us can only change ourselves, but when we change ourselves, everything else can change.
Exactly.
So it's just if something's not working in your life, really kind of taking that time, and for many people, meditation is seems like a bad word, but just even sitting out in nature and kind of saying to yourself, okay, this is not working for me. I'm going to just be quiet and allow myself to have insights into what those beliefs or decisions might be that I habitually make that I could tweak a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. And you mentioned a very important thing, and that is pure awareness has no judgment. Now, you didn't say it quite like that, but that's my words, and I'm reflecting it back. And I think that's really, really true. Because the moment you can eliminate your judgment, or even notice that you have a judgment, maybe that's part of the awareness process as well. Noticing the judgment, noticing the thought, noticing the story, noticing the imagination that comes up around a particular thing. I liken it to this idea of just going out and looking at the clouds. When you first, and especially if you're doing it with a friend, you're at first all you see is the clouds, right? But it doesn't take long before all of a sudden you're saying, oh, look, there's a face. Now you're focused on the face and not on the clouds anymore. You're focused on the shape that the cloud makes. That's the story in your mind. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But can you bring yourself to awareness? Oh, look at that. I am making up a story about these clouds. Let me just get back to the clouds. Can you do that? That's what awareness is really all about. Okay? And that's what meditation's all about too, by the way.
Right.
There's really no difference. So if you can do that, then what you do is you help yourself to release any story, any judgment, any opinion, any interpretation, and just see things for exactly what they are, which now that's a form of acceptance, isn't it? And once you're in that place of awareness and acceptance, you now have the options to look around and say, well, what choices do I want to make in this moment? And it's the choices that you make in the moment that lead to your next experience, your next expression of who you really are. And that is really the process of evolution in the simplest form right there. And evolution, what is evolution? Evolution is transition from one form to another form, and that's change, right?
Yes. That's great.
Well, we just saved the world again. How are you feeling right now, Kristi? I see a nice smile on your face, so I think I hope you're enjoying this conversation.
Oh yes, I'm happy to share and to, it's hard sometimes to put some of this into words, and
I agree.
I think that's part of where trying to find a space of firm footing in knowing that you're loved, knowing that you're valued, knowing that when you speak from that place of knowing yourself as love and knowing yourself as valuable, and each of us are valuable, or we wouldn't be here in human form. So, you've got to start to accept that as a given, that, you're important. And when we can have that peace and that space and that energetic, then the things that we attract to ourselves, or the way that we respond to things, can really change without a lot of work and toil and effort.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, we have been going for about an hour now, and so our time is starting to come to a close, and it's been an absolutely fabulous discussion. I'm just thrilled to bits that you were here to join me today. And I'm just wondering if you have any final words you'd like to share before I wrap it up.
I just would say to try to invite childlike wonder into your life. Be curious. Question what you think you know, and you may find that you know more than you thought you know. And just invite compassion and forgiveness into your life as much as you can, because they're so healing. And don't let yourself beat yourself up.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Kristi. It's been just a pleasure having you here again. And what I want to say to everybody is personal and spiritual growth is not just about setting goals and checking boxes or anything like that. It's about trusting in divine guidance and embracing the beautiful journey of transformation. A great way to do that is to surrender to the mystical flow of energy in your life and choose consciously to harness its life-affirming power. So accept the invitation of your soul to embark on this, I can only call it an enigmatic and mysterious journey, knowing that the energy within and around you holds the keys to unlocking your greatest potential. So thank you all for watching today's program. And remember, you can catch the recordings of this and every other episode on my website at lifemasterytv.com. And I just want to invite everybody to remember to practice the life mastery mantra every day. It goes like this. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So until we meet again, my name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. And I'll see you again here next time on Life Mastery TV. Bye-bye for now.